Hello and welcome to another nuanced and subtle episode of Almost Breaking News, coming to you on the Everything Electric YouTube channel. Coming up at the end of this news update, I will do a little review of this rather splendid Citroën ë-Berlingo that I've been driving for the last week. So this is a fairly optimistic news update, and we all need as much optimism as we can possibly get, don't we? There's a couple of little gripes in it, so don't worry, it's not all perfect. But first, I just want to say that it would be very easy to produce an episode of Almost Breaking News that's like 4 or 5 hours long every week, because there is so much happening in the electric ground transport and renewable energy sector around the world. Here's a few snippets. Pakistan is going gangbusters for solar. In the first 9 months of 2024, the country imported 17 gigawatts of solar panels from China, making it the third biggest market for Chinese panels globally. That is insane. They weren't buying any a couple of years ago. They've worked it out. In the UK, sales of new cars are down, really seriously down, if the cars are petrol or diesel. Electric car sales are up and increasing. Renewables accounted for 82% of electricity generation in Portugal in the first 10 months of 2024. 82% of all the electricity they consumed was from renewables in Portugal. Renewables covered 47% of Australia's electricity needs in October. That is incredible. The whole country was 47% powered by renewables. It's reports like these that mean I spend 5 times longer choosing stories than actually recording the news updates like I'm doing now. So I'm sorry if there's a massive news event that's relevant to the Fully Charged Show and the Everything Electric channel and I don't mention it. Now, I was trying not to start off with depressing stories, but there are a couple of humdingers in the news here in the UK and Europe that really do deserve comment. Here's a thought to start the ball rolling. You run a massive industry that sells a product that you and everyone else on the planet now accepts has a negative effect when it is used. People burn your product and you can't blame them even though you try, because that's what the product is for. And when your product is burned, the resulting emissions are harmful to all life on the planet. This, eventually, after many decades knowing about it, starts to become actually embarrassing. So you ask, no, you don't ask. Let me correct you at that. You pay a bunch of scientists and engineers millions of dollars to come up with a way of removing that harmful gas from the atmosphere and storing it somewhere. And those engineers and scientists try over 25 years and hundreds of millions of dollars in expenditure. They try and try, but they don't quite manage it. No one has successfully captured and stored any carbon in any way close to anything being convincing or at any scale that makes any difference. But don't let that annoying little fact stop you. You publicise and argue and pay for TV commercials and big posters, and you convince governments that you can capture these harmful emissions and store them safely. Because, and this is the critical point, if you can show that you really are trying to capture and store that harmful gas, you can keep extracting, refining and burning the product and keep the massive profits rolling in year after year. Recent media reports indicate that from 2022 until this new parliament took over, the carbon capture lobby groups, who are entirely funded by the fossil fuel industry, had literally hundreds of meetings with UK government ministers to extol the virtues and reliability of carbon capture and storage. We can carry on burning billions of barrels of oil and trillions of cubic meters of gas because we can capture that carbon and put it somewhere. So now the UK government is considering spaffing £22 billion over the next decade to help develop carbon capture and storage systems in the UK. Our taxpayer money to subsidise and support the richest, most powerful, most destructive industry that our poor, beleaguered planet has ever had to cope with. A technology which has resolutely failed to work again and again and again after countless attempts all over the world. It's being pushed as a solution to burning the product and generating the massive products for the fossil fuel industry, who now cannot believe their luck. They don't even have to pay for the fake attempt at clearing up the filthy mess they make. Now, I know some people are going to say we need CCS in certain key industrial sectors like cement manufacturing, steel making, etc. But with a bit of encouragement from governments around the world, those industries could and indeed are transition to much cleaner methods. As I say, many already are running on electricity instead of coal and gas, which would result in massive reductions of CO2 emissions. We've reported about many of them here in the last few years. But that won't profit the oil and gas industry, so there is no chance that that's going to happen. We are in an existential battle, and let's face it, the fossil fuel industry have won again. Hands down, they are laughing all the way to the bank. Good on them. It's an utter disgrace. Next story. And this one comes in kind of two parts. We've just heard that the EU is now imposing 45.4% tariffs on imported Chinese electric vehicles, despite the fact that the country in Europe that makes the most cars, Germany, was very much opposed to these tariffs. The EU decided that Beijing was undercutting European car makers with unfair state subsidies. Now, I'm not going to comment on the rights or wrongs of that. It's probably absolutely true. I have no idea. And we knew it was coming. It's not as extreme as the 100 or possibly more % tariffs that the USA and Canada have placed on Chinese cars, but it does seem like a move that could possibly backfire. I don't know anything. Maybe many European car makers, they sell cars in China. And Germany in particular is facing real problems with 3 VW factories closing, which brings us to part 2 of this section, because at the recent Paris Motor Show, there was a very, very big presence from China. As a perfect example, this car, I'd never heard of it before, the Skywell Q, was unveiled at the show in Paris. Now, like BYD, who made batteries for phones and laptops before they made cars, and Geely, who made refrigerator parts before they bought Volvo and started making cars, Chinese company Skywell have been making TVs, air conditioners, fridge freezers, and all manner of electronics before they started making cars a few years ago. Now, I don't know what this car will cost, how far it will go on a charge, how fast it can charge, and I have no idea if this venture is ever going to actually materialize. The company says this car will be on sale in Europe in 2025. We shall see. But the point is, they were just one of many, many Chinese car companies with massive displays at the Paris Motor Show. But Mercedes-Benz, Porsche, Hyundai, Toyota, Cupra, Nissan and Volvo did not take part. They didn't display anything here, and yet it was still an enormous event. So who was there? The story of the Paris Motor Show is all about China. Guangzhou Automobile Group, better known as GAC, were there with a lot of new offerings. BYD had a massive stand and are clearly aiming to make a very big impact in Europe. XPeng showed the P7, a car we had at our first event in Amsterdam, and also a car with an 800-volt platform, meaning it can charge very fast. Next story. I'm sure some of you may know that one of the many peculiarities of Texas is that it is isolated from the grid network in the rest of the USA. The rest of the USA is all kind of joined together in a massive grid, but not Texas. Now, I'm guessing this will have been a political and economic decision from many years back. It's been a bit problematic of late as the climate goes batshit crazy. Anyway, don't want to talk about Texas. If you want a truly isolated city and state, you can't get better than Perth and Western Australia. They have the world's largest isolated grid, and that's entirely because of geography. The nearest other Australian city to Perth is Adelaide, and that's 2,693 kilometres or 1,673 miles away across a massive desert. So stringing wires over that distance is a little bit bonkers. Western Australia is dealing with the challenges of becoming 100% renewably powered. It has huge solar and wind potential with the addition of massive battery storage facilities. The fact that it's isolated is important. For example, states like South Australia, British Columbia and Canada, and countries like Norway, they often achieve 100% renewably generated electricity on an almost daily basis. They often produce more than they can use, in which case they sell it to neighbouring states. They're all joined together by big wires. They can also buy electricity from neighbouring states during high demand and low renewable production. There is no such luxury for an isolated grid such as Western Australia, where rooftop solar is so popular it's already altered the way their whole grid operates. Recently, the state government has commissioned many of the biggest batteries in Australia, with the first one already online at Kwinana. Two massive 2-gigawatt-hour batteries are being built at Collie, near the site of an old broken-down coal-fired generating station. So the coal thing's out the window. Forget it, they're not going to be burning coal. It's cheaper. That's why they're doing it. In Western Australia, wind, solar and battery capacity has overtaken coal and gas generation and is set to replace them totally in the next 10 years. Wind, solar and batteries are being proven to work again and again in many varied locations. I'm not saying these systems will work everywhere. The upfront cost is coming down all the time and the economics are hugely beneficial. Paying for and burning fuel is stupid, short-sighted and rapidly running out of time. But wait, I hear some fossil lobbyists whine.
What is the cost of all this fancy renewable electricity in Western Australia?
That is a fossil fuel lobbyist as far as I'm concerned.
Isn't it? It's not fair. We don't get this.
The average wholesale electricity cost in Western Australia over the year is around $82 Australian dollars a megawatt hour. So the equivalent cost in the UK in pounds is about £42 a megawatt hour. How does that compare with what we pay in the UK, where the price of our electricity is set by the cost of importing gas? It's not set by wind turbines or solar panels, it's set by importing gas and paying for that gas that we give money to Norway and Saudi Arabia. The wholesale electricity cost in the UK is between £97 and £151 per megawatt hour. Oh, so what does that mean? Let me work that out. £42 a megawatt hour in Western Australia, 97 to 151 a megawatt hour in the UK. Yes, yeah, I've got it. Renewables are cheaper, for pity's sake. Next story. Clean gas. You know, the stuff we've been told again and again by politicians of all flavours is cleaner than coal and a transition fuel. It's a transition fuel. It's fine. It's clean. Don't worry about it. This is a story from The Guardian in the UK. I quote, "Exported gas emits far more greenhouse gas emissions than coal, despite fossil fuel industry claims that it is a cleaner alternative, according to a major new research paper that challenges the controversial yet rapid expansion of gas exports from the US to Europe and Asia." What a surprise. Who knew the fossil fuel industry and their patsies, stooges and apologists in the media and government were such blatant liars and con artists? I'm shocked, I tell you. Again, I quote, "The researchers concluded that LNG, liquefied natural gas, is 33% worse in terms of planet heating emissions over a 20-year period compared with coal." Let's start digging up coal again. No, that's not quite the point. The idea that coal is worse for the climate is mistaken. LNG has a larger greenhouse gas footprint than any other fuel, said Robert Howarth, an environmental scientist at Cornell University and author of the new paper. I don't even know what to say about that. Moving on, next story. We obviously cover a lot of news from China simply because of the enormous impact they're having on the industrial sector that our show is focused on. Well, new data from the International Energy Agency, the IEA, and Bloomberg New Energy Finance shows that there has been a major drop in oil demand in China due to the extraordinary growth in electric vehicle use and in particular the popularity and success of their incredible high-speed bullet train network. There's a long way to go to replace all the petrol and diesel guzzling cars already on China's roads, but the shift is accelerating, partly because in China, most brand new electric models are now actually cheaper to buy than brand new comparable combustion cars. And that's not because of tax, that's because they actually cost less to make. The IEA said this, and I quote, "With the steam seemingly running out of Chinese oil demand growth and only lackluster increases or declines in many other countries, current trends reinforce the expectation of global demand plateauing by the end of this decade." Oh, really? So we don't need quite as much. Now, I've always said that the transition to electric ground transport and renewables is disruptive, and it is, and it will be messy and difficult. Lots of stuff's going to go wrong. The most likely result of reductions in fossil fuel demand will mean the price will go down, which means we'll burn more of it in different places. But I still hold the fact that overall, in the next 20 to 30 years, we are going to witness drastic reductions in how much oil and gas we burn. Next story. A couple of really impressive recycling stories now. First, let's check out what's going on down in Fairfield, Ohio. A company called Nth Cycle is the first in the USA to actually start commercially extracting nickel and cobalt at enormous scale from black mass. Now, that's the stuff you're left with when you recycle batteries. You mash them all up and you end up with this load of black mass, and they're getting stuff that's really valuable and useful out of that black mass. Nth Cycle's Oyster system can be installed and operated in record time, so they can recycle these valuable and critical materials near other recycling plants, eliminating years of permitting and billions of dollars needed to build a standalone refining plant, while dramatically reducing transportation, emissions, waste, and of course, cost. The resulting metals reduce greenhouse gas emissions from mining by 90%. So these materials that they're getting out of recycled old batteries are 90% cleaner than digging up new materials, refining it, transporting it, and making it into batteries. And also, of course, reduce the USA's reliance on batteries and battery materials currently being produced in China. Meanwhile, over in Kuppenheim in southern Germany, Mercedes-Benz, heard of them, have just opened a battery recycling plant that can reclaim 96% of the materials in an old Mercedes electric vehicle battery. The plant covers all steps from shredding the battery modules to drying and processing active battery materials and sorting and separating plastics, copper, aluminium, I was almost going to say aluminum, aluminium and iron in a complex multi-stage process. And to top it all off, the recycling plant includes a 6,800 square metre roof equipped with photovoltaic system with a peak output of more than 350 kilowatts. I'm going to repeat the percentage of materials that can be recycled because I want to hammer it home. 96% of the materials in a Mercedes battery can and are being used again. Show me 1 fluid ounce of recycled diesel and I will buy a diesel Hummer. Now, I'm just going to do a little review after this of the rather splendid, I have to say, really comfy Citroën ë-Berlingo people carrier. But before that, I just want to say we all have to remember there is hope. We can make things better. And the most critical thing to remember right now is that renewable energy is cheaper and keeps getting cheaper and isn't going to stop getting cheaper for many, many decades. Fossil fuels, on the other hand, only ever get more expensive. That's it. Let's have a look at the ë-Berlingo.
So the Citroën ë-Berlingo, I mean, I quite like the styling. It's quite a nice chunky front end there, massive windscreen. I really like that. That is just beautiful. The wipers, exceptional. So many things about this car are brilliant. Clearly you can put a roof rack on it if you want to carry even more stuff, but there's so much room inside. I want to point one thing out that's very important. When Citroën delivered this car to my house, it was immaculately clean, spotless, and it took about 3 miles of driving around the lanes where I live before it was filthy. So that is very much my fault. This is the ë-Berlingo, an otherwise charming and delightful compromised electric car, because it is, you know, there is a diesel version. I don't know if there's probably a petrol version as well, and this is the electric version. So they will have done modifications on the overall construction of the vehicle to allow, you know, decent electrification, but it still feels like a gas-burning car that's been converted into an electric one. It has a 52 kilowatt-hour battery. It charges at 100 kilowatts, which is really good. I experienced that one time yesterday when I did finally use a rapid charger on it. The driving experience is faultless. It's so smooth and easy. and charming, and your visibility is fabulous. From a performance point of view, forget it. It's a Berlingo. It's a people mover. It's not a fast car. So the range, I think the range is slightly compromised. A 52 kilowatt hour battery. It's not a puny battery, but obviously it's a big van. As you can tell, it's a big, high-sitting, boxy van. So aerodynamics, don't want to know what it is. Not going to be that good. I got 3.4 miles to the kilowatt hour. That's as good as I could do. I had to drive 93 miles into London, 93 miles back. I knew I wasn't going to make it, so I rapid charged on the way back. Not for long, about 10 minutes, just to give me enough buffer. That's always the thing. People can think you've got to wait half an hour. No, you don't. You wait enough so that you've got a nice buffer. I had like 30 miles extra than I needed to get home. And it's so comfortable. You know, those 93 miles each way going into London, brilliantly comfortable. From the point of view of the grunt test for an old man, no grunting. I can get out of this car and into this car so easily. Now, one thing I've got to tell you about this car, and it took me a while to work it out, and I feel very embarrassed, but all the cars I've driven in the last 3 or 4 years, you get in with the key. You often need the key or a card or an app on your phone. You need something, and you get in and you put your foot on the brake and you select drive and it goes. That's it. That's all you have to do. Some of them, there's a button somewhere. You have to push to turn it on. Those are the sort of middling old school ones. This, proper old school, took me ages. I've got a key like that, just a normal key. And I went, how'd you start it? And then I suddenly saw that. You put a key in the slot, put your foot on the brake, turn the key, and now it's, well, it's coming on. It takes its time. There we go. That is fantastic. Anyway, I'm going to leave that on now. Look at this. You're in the back. You close the door. You can open the window. You couldn't do that in the old Berlingo. Okay. Let's have a look in the back. So, this is really impressive. It's not automatic. You have to move, you have to use your own body to do it. So massive door, massive low loading capacity, just huge. I do know how much it is. It's just enormous. Hang on, let me look up how much it is, because it's just crazy. And obviously you can put the seats down, it's even bigger. Maximum, it can tow a trailer up to 750 kilograms. Luggage capacity with rear seats up, 597 litres. With it down, 1,884. So it's basically a big van. But look how low that is. Brilliant. No big ridge or anything like that. Really, really good. I've had some shopping in there. It was lost in the massive capacity. It's got extra little doors there. It's got a really good cover that you can cover up the whole thing. No, it's great. From that point of view, from every point of view, this car is amazing. The only compromise is the range. And if you can live with 100, they're saying the WLTP is 220 miles, the real range is about 179, which really relates to what my experience has been. So if you can live with a car with 179 miles range, 180 miles range, let's call it that. I mean, if you can live with that kind of range and you can charge it at 100 kilowatts, it'll charge fast. You know, you just have to kind of, I don't know, I've got lazy and I've got used to cars that can go well over 200 miles. So I'm really, really spoiled. You know, but that is the only criticism of an otherwise really fantastic car. I think it's great. Well done, Citroën.
Well, that's all we got time for. Really hope you enjoyed that. Tried to keep it as optimistic as I could. A little bit depressing in places. I don't know. In the current circumstances, pretty damn impressive. Please do tell your mates about this show, and please do subscribe if you haven't already, and spread the word, and please come back again next week when we'll have loads more to tell you about. As always, if you have been, thank you for watching.